Hello everyone and welcome to another game we'll be showing from the Carlsen Ding match 4. It's the 6th game they're playing and it's the Blitz game. So after the two games that we talked about, game 1 being won by Magnus and Ding retaliating in game 2, that beautiful checkmate on f5 square, the next two rapid games were drawn and the first Blitz game was drawn, the one where Magnus had the white piece. And now this is the last game of the Blitz section of match 4, and if this is also a draw, then we go into Armageddon. If Ding wins, he forces another match to see who goes into the finals of the Magnus Carlsen Chess Tour, and if Magnus wins this, then he immediately goes to the finals. So without further ado, let's check it out. It's again quite the game. So Ding again with the white pieces opens with d4. Sorry about that. Opens with d4. Magnus goes knight to f6. We have c4, and now not going for king's Indian defense. Magnus not really enjoying what happened the last time he tried it, goes for e6 instead. So we have g3 and d5. Now striking in the center, we have the Catalan opening on the board, bishop g2, and now bishop to b4 check. We have bishop to d2 and going back with bishop to e7, making Ding's bishop look a bit funny on d2. We have knight f3, and now Magnus castles. We have castles by Ding, and now c6, and here queen to c2. So just nicely developing. We have b6 by Magnus, preparing bishop to b7, going for more control over the e4 square, and now knight to e5 by Ding, making it a bit hard to develop the knight here as the c6 pawn would be hanging. So bishop b7 first, and now a trade in the center, c captures, and rook to c1 by Ding. We have knight f to d7 by Magnus, offering a trade here. And now this position has been reached before, and every time white played queen to c7. And the thing about queen to c7 is that it's the strongest move recommended by the engine. Of course, everyone plays it here. The problem is that white never won a game playing queen to c7. So either the game was drawn or black won. And this is one of those cases where the absolute best move simply isn't enough. So here, instead of going queen to c7, Ding tries knight back to d3. He just avoids the trade and doesn't offer a queen trade. And it is as of move 12 that we have a completely new game. So let's see what happens. We have knight to c6. Magnus now develops while attacking the pawn on d4. e3, Ding defends it, and now rook to c8. So it's not anything special, but it does look a little bit better than for black than having the queen on c7 and then just controlling the 7th rank. So here, knight to c3. Ding would very much like to win this with the white pieces, so he doesn't have to go into Armageddon. So knight a5, now the knight is coming to c4, and here we have queen to d1. Ding brings the queen back, and now opens up the c file for the rooks to be traded. Knight c4, and also brings the bishop back. The knight defends the b2 pawn, so it's not a problem. We have knight back to d6 by Magnus, and now a4, hoping to bust open the position with a5. So we have a5 by Magnus. And now knight to b5, putting pressure on the knight here, and also it's a very nice square for the knight. So here we have a trade of rooks, rook captures, and now queen to b8. Magnus prefers to bring the other rook into the game to trade off the remaining rooks. We have b4 by Ding, and now knight to c4. So again, an excellent square for the knight, also serves as protection to the e5 pawn, a5 pawn. And now b captures on a5. We have b captures, and now Ding strikes in the center with a4. There might be some tricks, maybe sacrificing the exchange here and picking up the a5 pawn to create a passed a4 pawn. Problem is, for the moment, it's not possible, because if captures, pawn captures, and then also the knight will be under attack, and so on. So here we have e4 by Ding, busting open the center, and Magnus just continues with knight d to b6. Adds another defender to the knight, and he says, I don't care if you trade, if you advance. You could advance and close the center a bit, but even though this will somewhat close up the light square bishop, he can always go like bishop c6, offer a trade here, and it's not going to be all that much for white. So instead, knight d to b6 with e captures on d5, and the bishop captures. Magnus gladly offers a trade of the bishops with bishop captures, e captures, and now knight to e5. Ding says, I either want you to capture here, so I can get this pawn here, or maybe I will capture here, and then maybe, who knows what happens, maybe I can get a nice passed d pawn. And here Magnus says, okay, also there are maybe some tricks. If this knight moves, then maybe we can capture here. Maybe this knight will not be defending this square. Maybe knight here will be an option, forking the queen and the rook. So Magnus just improves the position of the queen with queen to b7. Now everything is nicely defended. Also the queen guards this, the queen also defends the bishop. However, this allows Ding for a beautiful tactic. So feel free to pause the video and try to spot this tactic while I give you a couple of seconds. And a little heads up, this is only the first of many paused videos in this video. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on spotting that the queen here is on a very awkward square. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's bishop captures on a5. This is what Ding played, and now the problem is if Magnus recaptures rook c7 and the queen has to move, you just pick up the bishop and you've sacrificed nothing, you've gained the passed a pawn, which is also defended. So here it would just be an excellent position for Ding. So instead, after bishop captures on a5, Magnus said, alright, so if this is the problem, going after the bishop, I'm just going to attack the rook. Bishop to g5, and now what do you play here? So now that the bishop moved, if f4, now you no longer care, you're just going to capture on a4, and then you're going to attack some other pieces. For example, if you go f4, you can just capture on a4. You could also capture on f4 first, bust open the position, but like if this and this, then okay, you've given up something for the moment, but you can still just go back. Or rather, you not knight captures on a4, knight captures on a5. Sorry, the microphone blocked my view of the knights. Knight captures on a5, and now it's just a fine position. For example, if you capture the bishop now, then the bishop is captured, but you can go queen to e7, put some pressure on everything, and it is a bit harder to play, but nothing odd really happening here. So, you know, Ding tried to give up a piece, but Magnus gave the piece back, opened up the king's position, and the white is still better here, but not you know, nothing conclusive. So this would be possible here. However, after this bishop captures on a5 and Carlsen's bishop to g5, not f4 by Ding, but rather bishop captures on b6. He just keeps on giving. He gives up the rook on c1, which is not a problem, because after bishop captures on c1, we have bishop to c5. He moves the bishop again with a threat of capturing the rook. So rook to a8 by Magnus, and now before capturing the bishop, first eliminates one more piece from the board, d captures, and only now queen captures on c1. We have rook captures on a4, and here knight to c3, just getting the knight out of harm's way, attacking the rook, and the rook to a5. And here we have a position where each player has 4 pawns, but Ding has a bishop and a knight for a rook. So on all accounts, this should be winning for Ding. And in fact is. So here Ding needs to go back, needs to consolidate a little bit, get the queen to e3, get the bishop somewhere back, for example. However, Ding starts pushing right away with h4, and now this is a problem because now it's Magnus who has the upper hand. Now again, feel free to pause the video and figure out why this is so while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on exploiting white's back rank weaknesses. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's queen to a8. And now the thing is, the queen here still controls this entire diagonal, and rook to a1 is the threat. Not just of winning the queen, but if you move the queen, it's also just rook a1 check, king moves to h2, and the rook to h1 will be checkmate. Just to give you an example, for example, you move the queen, check, king moves, and now this or queen delivers checkmate on h1. So here, after queen to a8, we have queen to b2 by Magnus. By Ding. He now needs to guard against the rook check. He needs to block it with the knight. But now rook a1 check, knight to b1, and now a brilliant c3 by Magnus, just deflecting the queen. Of course, the knight cannot capture. If the queen captures, it's again the same checkmate, so nothing really interesting for white there. So queen b3, Ding has to get out of the way, but now h6. Magnus also realizes that he could be having some back rank issues, and he can spend some time playing h6 as Ding has no way to take advantage of this. So Ding pushes d5. Now the queen no longer controls this diagonal, but it's not a problem. Magnus just goes queen to c8. he puts pressure on the bishop, and now the queen can't still keep an eye on both the knight and the bishop. Queen to e8 was even better, because it just threatens queen to e1 check, and there's really not much you can do about this. Then you're going to pick up the knight, and it's an easy game. But okay, queen to c8 by Magnus goes after the bishop. And now what can you do here? Problem is, if you try something like queen to b5 to keep an eye on both of these pieces, then c2 is just game over. The queen also needs to keep an eye on the c pawn. So here, after this queen to c8, we have king to g2, and now comes queen captures on c5. There was no way to avoid this. Queen captures on c3, knight captures on c3, finally getting rid of the passed pawn, but now rook back to a8. And now what can you do here? Well, now it's Magnus who's up the exchange, and Ding still has a passed d pawn, so maybe not all is lost yet. Ding wants to shift the knight over to f4 to keep an eye on the pawn here. And now rook to d8 by Magnus. We have knight to f4, and now while Magnus could just get rid of the knight with the g5 and pick up the pawn, it could be a bit tricky. Both of them are extremely low on time, a few seconds on the clock each. And here you might run into some problems after this. For example, you capture this, or even with the queen, even better. If the queen captures with check, you just trade, and knight f6 check picks up the rook, and the white just wins. So it's not a forced line, but you have a few seconds. You do not want a crazy knight jumping around in front of your king. So queen to d4 by Magnus. He just wants to shift the queen to e5, bring the rook to b8, then bring the rook into the game, and slowly but surely win this. So h5, now not allowing g5, as h captures and g6 en passant will be the idea. Queen e5 by Magnus, and queen to b6 now. We have rook to b8, now challenging Ding's queen, queen to c5, and now queen to e4 with check. We have king to h3 by Ding, king to h2, a bit more resilient. Then after king h2, you probably face rook to b2 with some pressure here. But king h3 runs into a lot of problems, because Magnus immediately goes rook to b1, now threatening rook to h1, of course. And here Ding escapes with king to g4, which is incredibly brave, but it loses the game. The thing is, if queen to c8 check first, king h7, and now king g4, now it's a bit different, because it's not so clear how to proceed here with black. Of course, black is better, but how do you win this with so few seconds on the clock? And you still have to worry about the passed pawn. The knight really does a nice job defending all of these squares around the black king, around the white king, and it's not all that clear. However, Ding played king to g4 first without going queen to c8 check first. But now, for the final time, feel free to pause the video and win the game for Magnus. It's actually a mate in 2, so have at it. So for those of you who spotted the mate in 2, congratulations. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's f5 with check. That's why queen to c8 check king h7 was important, because the queen was guarding the f5 square from there. And here, without having that, it just doesn't work. And here it was in this position that Ding Liren resigned the game, and with it the match, and with it the chance to appear in the final. So Magnus Carlsen is the first finalist, who will face the winner of the Daniil Duba versus Hikaru Nakamura matchup. Here we resign because it's interesting. Ding didn't allow to get checkmated on the board like Magnus. He resigned a move prior to checkmate. But I guess it's only, everyone knows what happens. If king h3 or king to h4, mate will follow. So there is now nothing to do here. The pawns create a wall against the white king. That's just it. So yeah, Magnus wins. He's the first finalist, and we are now waiting to see who will join him, Nakamura or Dubov, as we are going to cover some of the games from that match as well. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Polak Shlomo, Lars Evan Almas, Stephen Ramsey, Daniel Narloch, and Thomas Connors for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the grand final of the Magnus Carlsen Invitational, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.